Welcome to Defensive Structures 101. In this video, I'm going to be covering the 4 basic attack shooter defensive structures, as well as some gadget considerations for certain positions. Now keep in mind, there are many more defensive structures. I'm just covering the 4 most basic ones to help you and your team rank up and maybe start some competitive ballistic matches. So let's start by going over what the 4 basic defensive structures are. Firstly, there's the 2-1-2, which is 2A, 1 mid, 2B. This is the most common defensive setup and provides the most support across the map. Second, there's the 1-3-1. It's 1A, 3 mid, 1B. This is a great setup for a little bit of aggression and make sure you're taking mid control. Then there's a 3-1-1 or 1-1-3, which is 3 on one side, 1 in middle, and 1 on the opposing side. And then lastly, the 5 stack, where all 5 of your players are on one site. Now, all of these defensive structures have their pros and cons, but it's important that you know all of them and switch up their usage, because if you're playing a single defensive structure your entire game, good teams are going to be able to figure out the defensive structure you're running and exploit the weaknesses to try to win the round. So making sure that you have all of these defensive structures in your playbook is going to help your defensive side of the game and potentially help you win some matches. So let's jump into it. First up is the 2-1-2. This is the most balanced defensive structure that people tend to use the most because it can be played either passively or aggressively. So for the pros for this setup, 1 is good for flexibility. Players can rotate off mid to help a site, and then someone from the opposing site can rotate to help mid. So as long as you guys are shifting and using good communication, you guys can rotate over and help out the sides that need support. 2, it's great for solid crossfire and defensive setups. Having 2 people on a site allows you to set up crossfires and do bait and switch plays and have a better chance of defending the site against a little bit of aggression. Lastly, it's good for information gathering. Using a map like Skyline 10 as example, if there's a lot of information that they're outside B, your 2 A players can push together to try to take space and have the ability to trade one another if there is someone waiting for them outside of A. Let's go into the cons. If a site gets overwhelmed, losing 2 players can drastically reduce your chances of winning the round. It's very important for the players that are on a site. If they can feel a rush coming, they really need to back up and give their team some time to rotate in. Secondly, as I mentioned in a pro, it requires good coordination and communication to pick up rotates. If your mid player is going to rotate over to help B, then one of your A players need to rotate over to cover mid. And that coordination, even the timings, a few seconds can change around if they're able to take space while you're rotating over. And lastly, if your enemies can kind of figure out that you're playing a 2-1-2, they know that the mid side's weak, and if they take mid control, they're able to do whatever they want. They can pinch on whatever site and isolate those players and generally pick up some free kills, which again, going back to a 5v3 or even a 5v2 if they kill the mid player, it really lowers your chances of winning a round. Next up is the 1-3-1 formation. Now this is for a strong mid control. It requires 3 people playing in mid and 1 person playing on each site. And it's very important that the players on each site are playing passively and falling off when they get information if a team's pushing site so that the team can retake. Going into the pros, the way that works is it gives you a really fast chance to retake before your opponents get a good post plant setup. And in addition, it allows for a little bit of aggression on flanks and maybe taking some space on defense, which can give you a lot of information on where the opponents are. Also, with strong mid control, it means you prevent a lot of pinches. So for instance, on a map like K-Zone Commons, if there's people in gallery, that prevents the opponents from being able to push through gallery and pinch mid and forces them to play through cubby or B-long. Some of the cons, kind of mentioned the 2-1-2. When you only have 1 player playing on a site, it's kind of hard to maintain the fact that no one is pushing that site without putting yourself at risk. So there's a chance that enemies can walk up, take space on site, rotate in, and maybe collapse on that site player before they know what's happening. A lot of times, if gadgets like impulses are used, the opponents can catch out your player that's on site and isolate them and kill them before they're even able to get any backup. And ultimately, they take control of the site, which is their main objective. Another con is something I've mentioned, but it's really reliant on those solo players. They need to do their job effectively, and if a person stays too long or tries to take fights, they can really harm their team, even when you have a strong mid presence where you can rotate quickly. Another con is usually if you're playing a strong mid presence, you're going to be seen as they're taking information. So they can see that you're playing strong mid, they know that the sites are weak, gives them the information to push the sites. So as much as you're gaining information on a 1-3-1, you're also giving the opponents information to be able to take sites pretty easily. Next up is the 1-1-3 or 3-1-1. Now this setup is focused on having one player isolated on one site and 3 players on a site that is harder to protect, whether that be A or B on any map. Now the 3-1-1 is good if you know that an opponent favors a particular site because it gives you more defensive structure. It allows for more advanced defensive setups as well. Lots of bait and switch plays, good crossfires where you can kind of mow a team down if they try to go in and don't use their utility effectively. So the pros are extremely strong objective defense. Obviously, if they push that site and you have 3 people there, usually they're having to push through chokeholds, and you're able to do a lot of damage without having to fall back because you're relying on your team to play well together. It greatly increases your chance of survivability for your anchor group. Having 3 people there instead of 2 people allows you to do a lot more, have a lot more utility, do a lot more damage, and given the way that sites are set up, you have a very good advantage because a lot of sites have choke points that people have to enter. 3 guns on one location, pretty good opportunity for you to get some high damage. Another benefit is similar to the 1-3-1, except from a site perspective. With 3 people on the site, if the opponent's playing slowly, you have the opportunity to do an aggressive push on defense, and they're likely not going to have 3 people sitting outside of a site if they're trying to play a default and take some time. So you have the potential to get some free picks. It's a really good information gathering tool, but from a site perspective instead of just a mid perspective. Now the cons are obviously the same with the 1-3-1. You have one site that will only have 1 player, but the big con is the fact that it's going to take a long time for that anchor group on whatever site to rotate over to the other one. So if your player can't get out, or if your mid or solo site player are isolated, there's a chance that you go down a player pretty early. In addition, you have relatively limited map control. Even with your aggressive push, if you end up doing it, you don't really get a lot of information on the rest of the map. And at the end of the day, if they do rush that site, it is still a 5v3. They have numbers advantage, and if you don't play it properly, you've essentially lost the round for your team because losing 3 players, you're at a 5v2 potentially. You don't leave yourself a good chance to win that round if that's the case. Last up, we have the 5 stack. Now this is a pretty simple one to explain. You either have 5 people on A or 5 people on B. I guess you could also do 5 people in mid, but if you're going to do that, you need to play very aggressively. The strength in this setup is the strength in numbers. Typically, people use this setup a lot on eco rounds because that is a way that they can try to gain some sort of firepower back, having advantage as a team pushes a site, but it's a very big gamble. But on a gun round, the benefits are obviously you have a great overwhelming firepower on one site. If a team pushes it, you should win a 5v5 when you have the actual advantage of holding a site, because sites are designed for the defenders to be able to hold back the opposing team a little easier, and if all 5 of you are there, they should not be able to take it from you. The other advantage, as I mentioned, is being able to give yourself a better chance of being able to maybe get some kills if you're on an eco round or anything like that. And it allows you to do more advanced defensive structures. With 5 stacks, you can hide people in corners, and even if opposing team sees 3 players, they might still make a push, and it allows you the opportunity to maybe get some picks. Additionally, if the opposing team is playing slow, you pushing out with 5 members guarantees your refrags. And if you're on something like an eco, maybe you can get a gun from it and take some space. So the cons are pretty obvious. If you stack one site and they go to the other one, you haven't really given yourself an advantage. And given the fact that you're going to be on the opposite side of the map, it gives the opposing team a lot of time to set up a post plan, which gives them a pretty big advantage in the round. Another con is you're susceptible to taking a lot of damage from a single utility piece like a grenade or a molly. If you're stacked on something, you have multiple people there, one grenade can do a lot more damage than maybe using a grenade on one person on a site holding a particular spot. Another huge con is you have absolutely 0 map control. Even if the opponent ends up taking the other site and plants the bomb, you don't know if they're sitting in a corner right outside the site that you're in. You might get caught out by someone lurking or even multiple lurks, and you have to clear everything on your way to the other site to try to retake, so there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. And lastly, it's just kind of obvious when it's happening. Good teams can gather information pretty easily, And if they see that there's nothing happening on certain sites and utilities not being used, or they don't hear sound and things like that, they can kind of get a feeling that it's going to be a 5-stack. Now, the only way that 5-stacks typically work is if a team is fast rushing. If a team does not play slow, maybe 5-stacks are something you can throw in every once in a while. But if a team has a slow, methodical approach to play, I would not recommend doing 5-stacks very often unless you're trying to make a desperation play or get back into the game. So, with all of those defensive structures in mind, let's talk about a few other considerations when it comes to gadgets. Certain gadgets have certain roles on different sides of the map. For instance, your recons. You're not going to want to have your recons playing a forward position, and usually you don't want them to be isolated as well. Make sure your recons are playing a little bit further back so that player can stay alive and you can utilize your recons for retakes and information gathering. Stacking damage gadgets on the site in a 2-1-2, for instance, is a really good opportunity to hold back a push. Throwing mollies, having mines, having nades makes people hesitant to push the site and gives you more time to rotate some people over to support your team. You want your med mist to be centrally located, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in the middle of the map. They want to be close enough to enough players that it increases their efficacy. For example, having a med mist in a 3-1-1 on the anchor group is a very good usage of med mist because you're close enough to 3 players that you can heal and also use them as smokes to potentially prevent pushes on a strong side. And the last thing to consider is your movement gadgets. Now, when you're planning for aggression, it's great for those movement gadgets to be able to chase some people down, but they're also very strong when they're the solo site players. Just imagine 5 people are rushing a site and your impulse player is over there. They see those 5 people and they're able to impulse out, regroup with their team, and have a 5v5 retake instead of a 4v5. It's a pretty good situation to be in. Well, that's it for Defensive Structures 101. Hopefully you guys gained some value from this. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments down below. And let me know if you guys enjoyed this type of video so I can make more of these in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.